My ex left me for a better life. Years later, she found out who owned the company she applied to. She left me broke, but now her fate is in my hands. When Vanessa walked out on me 6 years ago, she didn't just leave me. She left our 2 children behind with nothing more than a note. It said she needed a better life, that I was holding her back, and that one day she'd return. At the time, her words felt like knives cutting through everything we had built together. I was devastated, but even worse was trying to explain to 2 confused kids why their mother was gone. My son asked me if she was dead. I couldn't bring myself to say the truth, that to me, in that moment, she might as well have been. Nights were sleepless, days were heavy, and my phone was filled with unanswered calls and voicemails that never reached her. Slowly, I began to adjust to being a single father. At first, the silence in the house felt unbearable, but gradually, it became peaceful. Without her constant demands for more money, more clothes, more luxuries we couldn't afford, I finally had breathing room. My savings stopped vanishing into handbags and jewelry, and instead went toward stability for me and my kids. After a year, I filed for divorce. It was granted without her presence, and with that, I sold the house that once felt like a cage. I moved us into a quiet cabin I had always dreamed of living in, a simple place where laughter replaced arguments and where we could finally heal. By the 3rd year, my kids had stopped asking about their mother. We had formed our own rhythm, our own life, one that felt lighter without her shadow hanging over us. But then, 6 years later, just as the pain had settled into a distant memory, footsteps returned to my door. And when I saw her silhouette on the porch, my heart froze, not because of love, but because I already knew what she had come for. She stood there as if nothing had happened, with that same confident smile she used whenever she wanted something. "Hello, darling. I'm back, just like I promised," she said, as though 6 years of silence and abandonment could be erased with a single line. I couldn't believe her audacity. She was dressed in flashy clothes, still dripping with the need to impress, as if her time away had taught her nothing. Meanwhile, I had changed completely. I was no longer the man who tolerated her constant demands. I had built a new life, for myself and for our kids. "Vanessa," I said flatly, "what are you doing here?" She tilted her head, waiting for me to embrace her. When I didn't, she pouted slightly and replied, "I told you I'd come back. We can pick up where we left off. Just like I wrote in the letter." I almost laughed. The sheer absurdity of her thinking we could rewind time was insulting. My tone grew colder. "You think you can disappear for 6 years, abandon your family, and come back like nothing happened?" Her eyes flickered with surprise. This wasn't the reunion she had imagined. She tried to soften her voice, feigning humility. "I know I made mistakes, but I had to find myself. And now that I'm back, we can be a family again." Just then Lucas, our oldest, stepped outside. He froze at the sight of her. He was 12 now, more mature than he should have been. She stretched her arms toward him, smiling. "Lucas, my boy, look how much you've grown." But instead of running to her, he took a step back. His voice was sharp, filled with resentment. "What are you doing here?" Her smile faltered, but she still didn't seem to understand the damage she had done. Vanessa's smile trembled for just a second, but she quickly forced it back onto her face. "I'm here now, and that's what matters," she said, taking a step toward Lucas. He crossed his arms and looked at her with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You don't get to say that," he snapped. "You left us. You didn't care if we were okay. You didn't care about Dad." Her eyes flicked to me, silently begging for support, but I stayed quiet. This was her mess to face. She knelt down, trying to meet Lucas's eyes, but he turned his head away. The rejection cut deeper than any words I could have given her. She stood back up and smoothed her dress, as if nothing had happened. "We'll work through it," she said softly, though it sounded more like she was convincing herself. "We're still a family." I let out a dry laugh. "A family? You abandoned that the night you walked out. You don't just get to walk back in and reclaim it." For the first time, her composure cracked. Her lips trembled, and her tone shifted from confidence to desperation. "I thought you of all people would understand. I needed more out of life. I was drowning here, and I had to chase my dreams." I shook my head. "You didn't chase dreams. You chased someone else. Don't lie to me." Her eyes widened slightly, caught off guard by the bluntness. She opened her mouth to protest, but no words came. The truth hung heavy between us. Lucas stormed back inside, leaving the two of us in silence. Vanessa wrapped her arms around herself, and for the first time in years, she looked small. "Can we at least talk?" she asked quietly. I stared at her, torn between anger and curiosity. She wanted something. I could feel it. But what? We sat at the porch table, the wood worn from years of rain and sun. She fidgeted with her bracelets, avoiding my eyes. For someone who had left with so much certainty, she suddenly looked unsure. "I thought you'd be happy to see me," she finally whispered. "I thought maybe we could start over." I leaned back in my chair. "Start over? Vanessa, you left us with nothing. You didn't even call the kids on their birthdays. Do you have any idea what that did to them? To me?" Her eyes watered, but I couldn't tell if it was regret or just performance. She reached for my hand, and I pulled it away. That small motion seemed to wound her more than my words. "I didn't know how to come back," she admitted. "The first year, I told myself it was too soon. Then more time passed, and I thought maybe you hated me. But I always meant to return." I narrowed my eyes. "No, you didn't. You only came back because whatever fantasy you left for fell apart." Her silence confirmed it. She pressed her lips together, then said softly, "He wasn't who I thought he was. I thought he'd give me the world, but it all crumbled." I let out a bitter laugh. "So you thought you could just slip back into my life, like nothing happened? That I'd still be waiting?" Her voice cracked. "I thought you loved me enough to forgive me." The arrogance of it all made me clench my fists. For years, I had picked up the pieces she left behind, and here she was, acting as though love could erase abandonment. Before I could respond, the door creaked open, and my daughter peeked out, her eyes wide and frightened. "Daddy, is she staying here now?" The question pierced deeper than Vanessa's return ever could. I turned to my daughter and forced a smile, though my chest tightened. "No, sweetheart. She's just visiting." Vanessa's face fell, but she quickly tried to mask it with a smile toward our little girl. "Emma, you've grown so much. Mommy's missed you." Emma tilted her head, confused. "Then why didn't you call?" "All right." Her voice was small, but her words cut like glass. Vanessa opened her mouth, but no excuse came out. She glanced at me, as if I could rescue her from a question, but I stayed silent. Emma deserved her answer. Finally, Vanessa whispered, I made mistakes. I thought I was doing what was best." Emma frowned. "Best for who? Not for us." Then she shut the door, leaving Vanessa staring at the wood grain as if it had just slammed on her entire past. I folded my arms. "You see? They don't need you anymore. They needed you years ago, and you weren't there." Her voice hardened. "Don't act like you're perfect. You didn't always give me the life I wanted either." There it was, the truth spilling out again. She hadn't come back for love or even for family. She had come back because her so-called better life had failed, and she thought I was still her safety net. I shook my head slowly. "Vanessa, whatever we had is over. You made sure of that." For the first time since she'd arrived, she dropped the fake softness. "Fine," she said, standing tall again. "If that's how it is, I'll just make my own way. I don't need you." Her voice rang with defiance, but beneath it, I could hear the fear. She was desperate, and I had a feeling this wasn't the last time I'd see her. Because people like Vanessa never really leave. They circle back when they want something. Weeks passed after that encounter. I thought maybe she'd vanish again, but I should have known better. Vanessa always reappeared when her pride was hurt, and this time was no different. One morning, I was sipping coffee before work when an email alert popped up. It was from HR at my company, a forwarded application for an open position. My eyes froze on the name. Vanessa. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen, my heart pounding. She had no idea. To her, this was just another desperate attempt to rebuild her life. But the company she had chosen was mine. Years earlier, I had started small, freelancing from the cabin after the divorce. What began as survival had grown into a thriving business. By the 5th year, I had turned it into a full-fledged company. Now we had offices, employees, clients across the state. And I was the sole owner. I leaned back in my chair, a slow, incredulous smile spreading across my face. Of all the places she could have turned to, fate had led her straight into my hands. Later that day, my assistant walked into my office. "Sir, one of the applicants has a resume that doesn't quite match her references. Should we discard it?" I took the folder from her and glanced at the photo. Vanessa, posing confidently as if she hadn't left a trail of destruction behind her. "No," I said calmly. "Schedule her for an interview." My assistant nodded, not knowing the history, and left. I closed the folder and stared at her picture. Vanessa thought she was walking into a chance at redemption. She didn't realize she was stepping into my world, one I had built without her. And now, the question lingered in my mind. Would I give her the chance she was begging for, or show her what it feels like to be powerless? The day of the interview arrived, and I dressed deliberately simple. No suit, just a crisp shirt with rolled sleeves. I wanted her to see me not as the man she left, but as the man I had become. When the door opened, she walked in with that same air of entitlement, chin high, perfume thick enough to announce her presence before she spoke. But when her eyes landed on me behind the desk, the color drained from her face. "You," she whispered, clutching her folder tighter. I leaned forward, my elbows on the desk. "Welcome, Vanessa. Please have a seat." For the first time, she was speechless. She sat slowly, as if the chair might collapse under the weight of her shock. Her perfectly rehearsed lines about why she wanted the job evaporated. I didn't know this was your company," she stammered. I smiled faintly. "Clearly. Otherwise, I doubt you would have applied." She looked down, her fingers trembling against the edges of her resume. For once, Vanessa wasn't in control. "So," I continued, flipping through her papers, "you're applying for a managerial position. Says here you have experience. But tell me, Vanessa, what exactly qualifies you to lead when the last time you faced responsibility, you walked away?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She had no answer, and she knew it. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Finally, she whispered, "I need this chance. Please." Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. Not demanding, not manipulative, pleading. And as I studied her across the desk, I realized the power dynamic had completely shifted. For years, she held control over me. Now, the roles were reversed. I could decide her future with a single word. I let the silence linger, watching her squirm in her chair. Her eyes darted around my office, taking in the shelves of awards, the framed photos of me and the kids, the small signs of a life she had never believed I could build. Finally, I set her resume down and leaned back. "Why this company, Vanessa? Out of all the places you could have applied, why here?" She swallowed hard. "Because I know it's good. I heard it's successful. I need a fresh start." I tilted my head. A fresh start, built on someone else's foundation? Seems familiar. Her jaw tightened, shame flickering across her face. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I'm trying, okay? I need stability. I don't have anywhere else to go." For a moment, I almost pitied her. The same woman who once chased designer handbags and expensive trips was now reduced to begging for a job she thought was beneath me years ago. But then I remembered Emma's trembling voice asking if her mother was staying. Lucas's hard stare on the porch. The birthdays missed. The tears I'd wiped away alone. I straightened in my chair. "You walked away from us when we needed you most. You don't get to walk back into this company like nothing happened." Her voice cracked. "Please, just let me prove myself." I paused, then gave a slow nod. "Fine. You'll get an interview like everyone else. No favors. No shortcuts. If you earn it, you earn it." Relief washed over her face, but wasn't victory. It was survival. She didn't realize that whatever happened next, she would never again hold power over me. That part of our story was over. And for the first time in years, I felt truly free. The following week, Vanessa came in for her official interview. I didn't conduct it myself. I had my HR team handle it. I wanted no accusations of bias. Still, I kept an eye on everything from a distance. She arrived dressed to impress, speaking with the same confidence that once fooled me, but now I could see through every polished word. My staff listened politely, but I noticed their skeptical glances. They saw the cracks I had once ignored. Afterward, my HR manager, Julia, came into my office with her notes. She has some skills, Julia said carefully, but she overstates her experience. And honestly, she doesn't seem like a team player. I don't think she's a good fit. I nodded slowly. Noted. That night, as I closed my laptop, I sat with the decision in my hands. Part of me wanted revenge, to reject her outright, to watch her crumble. But another part of me, the part that had grown stronger over the years, didn't care about vengeance. I had already won by building a life without her. The next morning, I signed the decision letter. It was short and professional. Thank you for applying. After careful review, we've decided to move forward with other candidates. When she received it, she showed up at my office unannounced, tears brimming in her eyes. You could have helped me, she cried. After everything we shared, you could have given me this chance. I stood firm. After everything we shared? Vanessa, you left me and the kids behind without a second thought. I owe you nothing. She glared at me, but there was no fire left in her. Only defeat. For once, she couldn't twist the story. And in that moment, I realized I didn't need revenge. I already had justice by simply living better without her. She left my office that day without another word, her heels clicking down the hall until the sound disappeared. I stood by the window, watching her walk across the parking lot, smaller somehow, as if the weight of her choices had finally caught up with her. I thought I'd feel triumphant. I thought I'd savor the image of her walking away defeated. But instead, I felt lighter, like a chapter had finally closed. When I got home that evening, Emma was sprawled on the couch with a book, and Lucas was finishing his homework at the kitchen table. The moment I walked in, they both looked up and smiled. That was the victory I cared about. Dinner, I asked, setting my keys down. Pizza, Emma shouted, and Lucas rolled his eyes but laughed. I joined them at the table, realizing just how far we'd come. Vanessa had walked out in search of a better life, but I had already found mine. Not in wealth or status, but in the quiet strength of rebuilding from nothing, and in the love of two kids who had stood by me through it all. That night, as we shared pizza and laughter filled the cabin, I finally understood something. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't payback. It's living well, moving on, and showing the world, and yourself, that you were never the one who was left behind. And in that truth, I was free.